Hello, hello. Welcome to ReleDate, The Bachelorette. My name is Caroline. I'm your host. And so, with The Bachelorette being such a popular show, with me being such a big fan of The Bachelorette, I thought it was going to be really beneficial for us to take some time to really break down what's going on as Katie goes on this journey to hopefully find a husband. So, we saw a lot of different things in this first episode. It was the introductions, it's where they introduced Katie, and then she got to meet all of the men. And I think that the thing that stood out to me the most about Katie was just how relaxed she was. I know that she said she was nervous, but she really didn't seem that nervous to me. She seemed really excited to be able to meet all of the men. Which if you're in that position, like, I hope you're excited, but I get it. Like, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of new people coming at you. You're trying to remember names, trying to remember a little bit about each person. Like, that's just tough to do sometimes. And I know that there were a few standouts, some positive, some negative, that Katie really seemed to latch on to. And so with that, I wanted to focus on a couple different things today. One of them is a comment that she made early on about her parents being divorced and how that impacts her relationships. So we'll touch on that. And the other one is this idea of how to impress someone new, how to impress a potential dating partner. And as we saw, she's got 30 new dating partners at this point. So those are the two highlights that I want to touch on here. I know that there was some drama that happened with a few of the contestants. Maybe that will become more relevant as we go on, but it's not something that I'm going to hit on today. Although, yes, it was very interesting to watch. So yeah, let's get started. Well, we'll start with the divorced comment because I thought that that was really interesting to hear. I took that, I guess, as a therapist, as just like, oh, so just because your parents had this divorce automatically means that you don't know how to be in healthy relationships. Because I know that sometimes we look at a divorce as a bad thing, but in all honesty, divorce can be a really good thing at times too, especially if the couple is just fighting or not getting along or anything like that. And so Katie could have learned a lot from that to begin with. Katie could have learned a whole lot about when to get out of a relationship or when to end something because of the fact that her parents are divorced. She can also learn maybe the signs of when to stay in something because of the fact her parents are divorced. So I saw that, I heard that comment in the very beginning, and it hit me not great, because just because parents are divorced does not mean that you automatically do not know how to be in a healthy relationship. That's not true. I'm curious to see how that plays out. As you all know, Katie was in the last season, was in Matt's season. She was a contestant on his season and did fairly well. If you remember, she was the one that came out of the limo with a vibrator. So with a sex toy, with a vibrator, and kind of made jokes about that. And so this has really opened things up in her season this time around to allow her the space to, preach sex positivity. And I think that that is incredible. Like, that's something that doesn't get talked about nearly as much as it probably should. And regardless of where people stand on it, whether they are like Colton. So Colton was the one that came in and said he's a virgin. And I know that that's going to probably play a big piece later on. They've kind of alluded to it playing a big piece later on in the show. So whether you're like Colton, who is a virgin, or says he's a virgin, or some of these other men that were making kind of more sexual jokes with Katie, it doesn't necessarily matter where you fall in that spectrum. It's just trying to make sure that you are aware of your own comfort level. And Katie is very comfortable with talking about sex and what that means for her. Like, Katie wants that in her life, and I think that that is fantastic, but it's definitely something that should be talked about more, and seems to be a change from what we've seen in the past as well. Sex seems to be one of those things that, like, oh, we can't talk about or we don't talk about, whereas Katie's kind of been the opposite in saying, like, yes, this is absolutely something I want to talk about. This is absolutely something that I want in my future. So I'm very curious to see how that continues over time. I know that people were, a couple of the contestants were kind of making jokes on their way in, alluding to Katie's intro with Matt, which again was her stepping out of the limo with the vibrator. If you haven't seen that, it's pretty entertaining to watch, and she definitely got some flack for it from some of the other contestants. So yeah, it's definitely worth going back. It's like the first episode of Matt's season. But yeah, it's interesting to see her playfulness with that. And I know that she keeps on encouraging everyone to be themselves. And I think that she's really set herself up on a good foot to do that for herself. Now, with people being themselves and really trying to joke with her, she's a very fun, loving person in that way, is that she likes joking. She doesn't take things too seriously. There were a couple standouts, one kind of positive, one kind of negative, at least in Katie's eyes. One of them was Jeff, and Jeff was the one that decided to drive his RV down to the Bachelorette, which is good. Like, he's trying to show what he wants, trying to show what he's about, and that's definitely appreciated. But it's also worth noting that in his case, he got sent home. And it's not because he's a bad guy. It's not because his RV, I guess we can all have different opinions on what his RV was like. We all saw it. It was an RV. It was an older RV. But he's really laying it out on the table and trying to pinpoint those things that are really important to him. And I think that that's incredibly important to do. Like, that's what you should be doing while you're dating. And yes, he took a big risk of taking her in there and saying, like, this is me, this is my life. But at the same time, now he gets to go home and figure it out. Now he's not being strung along. And I know that this is TV, like, people being strung along is going to happen for entertainment purposes as well. But in this case with Jeff, it didn't work for him. And that's okay. That's, again, not to say that his RV is bad, but just to say that him and Katie may not have been a good match. And that's okay. But it's still important for him to be able to take the time to lay it all out on the table, for all of them to lay it all out on the table and spend that time really, showing Katie who they are and allowing Katie to then reciprocate and show them who she is. So that was the kind of negative standout. Yes, it was a big move on his part. No, it did not work for him. Yes, he did get sent home, but that's okay. The other big standout that honestly, like, this seemed to really work for him was Connor the cat. And so he knew Katie was a big cat person. He really played into that and decided to come dressed up like a cat. People thought he was kind of crazy for that, but it seemed to work out really well for him, to the point where Katie was at least considering for a second giving him the first impression rose. That's not who ended up getting it. It was Greg, which honestly, Greg didn't stand out as much for me. I'll be curious to watch him as we continue on. But Connor also took a big risk. Connor took a big risk of saying, like, this may make me look silly, this may make me look ridiculous, but we're going to do it and see if Katie likes it. And in that case, that was one that worked out. And I know that that's that part of what makes dating hard and meeting new people hard is, like, am I going to get rejected for this thing that I hold so dearly, such as Jeff's RV? Or is it going to be accepted, like Connor's cat costume? So that's a tough line to walk. That's a very fine line to walk. But at the same time, like, being yourself, being out and open and all of that is going to be best in making sure that you're finding a match that's going to work best for you. And I know that Katie's in a unique situation where there's definitely some TV drama that gets created because of it. But at the same time, these are people's real emotions. These are people's real feelings. And we're going to see that kind of come into play too. We already did. I said I wasn't going to touch on the fight. Here's 2 comments about the fight. I don't even remember what contestants it was. I just remember them getting really nitpicky with each other, seemingly kind of out of the blue, unless I missed something or just didn't pick up on it. But they're in a high stress situation. Like this, they're all dating the same girl. I know that that's tough. Dating multiple people at once is not bad. But all of the people that are dating the same person as you. And I think that that's where it's going to be really stressful. It typically is stressful and has been in previous seasons too, where people have really felt that. People have really felt the impact of dating multiple people at once. So yeah, these are, my comments for the first episode here. And again, I'm going to continue doing these. I'm going to continue following the series along and making videos just about the relationships and bringing relationship science to it. That's what I got today, though. I'd appreciate your comments. Please share with friends. We're trying to get this up off the ground. But yeah, thanks for coming and hanging out with me for a little bit. I will see you all next week. Have a good one.